All right, today we'll be working on a 2013 Jeep Wrangler, replacing the front speakers components, which is a separate woofer and tweeter, and radio with steering wheel controls and Bluetooth. I'm going to start on the passenger side with this speaker. We'll start with removing the glove box. It just pulls right out. This is our woofer in this enclosure inside, but we have to take that out. Remove the side panel. Show some 7mm bolts on this side. And there's also a 10mm on the inside, which I've got to remove a 7mm underneath to gain access to. Ten millimeters, kind of tricky to get to. Then we can slide this enclosure. Let's unplug it first. Then we'll slide this enclosure over and out. So we'll replace our woofer with our aftermarket and replace our tweeter with the aftermarket also. This grill just pops off and the tweeter comes with it. It'll just pop out of this housing, which will put our new tweeter inside this housing and put it back in here. And our tweeter will be replacing our factory tweeter. And this is our woofer. These are available from Crutchfield that will plug directly to our factory harness. For this particular installation, we are connecting our crossover network. So I will cut these ends off. So not going into a speaker. We'll strip back here and this will be our input. We're going to use the white as positive, the black is negative here. So our factory tweeter has factory wire running to it from the factory radio. We're not going to use that wire. We're going to use this run up to that tweeter location. You want to make sure you've got enough wire after your crossover is mounted that you can still access your terminals, or it may be hard to get the speaker in the box. And before we get too far to mount this in the box, we need to make sure this actually has a selectable switch for our tweeter output. Since the tweeter's high in the dash, you can really hear it. I'm going to turn this to -3, so this is a switch all the way to the right. All right, this also to mount has holes under this cover. So I'm going to plug this in now. All right, to mount this in here, this is obviously at an angle where I can't really get my drill in. This is quite a handy tool here that I can attach to my drill and get a right angle so I can easily get that in there. Now before we put it all back together, you want to make sure that is installed. We need to run our tweeter wire out. Since this is a sealed enclosure, I'm going to drill a hole. We have openings. I'm going to put this. We call it dum-dum, also known as butyl rubber. That'll seal that hole around that. And now we can put our woofer in. I'm going to put this gasket around here. Also get a good seal on our speaker that way. These are made to only go on one way. You want to check the orientation of your enclosure to where it's going in the vehicle. Just in case anyone sees through that grill, you can see that the speaker is in the right orientation there. In some applications, you will have to modify. This tweeter needs to fit in this housing so we can put it back in the factory location. So obviously this one's a little big, so I'm gonna have to do a little modification to get it there. So for modification, I have to grind the outside of the speaker. I'm covering the front of the speaker with tape so I don't get any grinds down into the speaker itself. After a little massaging, you can see we got it to fit into our factory housing. Okay, now we're going to reinstall this opposite of insulation. Okay. So get it in there, slide it back over to this side. We'll reinstall our screws here. And now we'll get the 10mm underneath. Be sure to plug your factory speaker back in, or the factory housing back in. We'll also run this wire up to our tweeter location. And I'll stick this up through our tweeter location. All right, brought in a piece of old carpet I'm gonna put up here as a drop cloth. So I'm gonna do some soldering in the vehicle. I'm gonna cut our wire off a little here. Twist them together. So you're gonna put the tip on the wire, let the wire heat up, and let the wire pull the solder in. We're going to tape these joints up here so they do not touch each other. If you do not tape the joints, or if you don't tape appropriately, they will ground out and the speaker will sound terrible. I'm going to reach outside here and pull back our extra wire that we have. And we'll work this tweeter back into the factory housing. Our last step on this, we got to make sure we put our side panel back on. It's got these tabs that snap right back into factory pieces on this side. There's the installation on the passenger side. Driver side is similar. There is a little bit extra disassembly because you've got the steering column and that sort of thing in play. Just take your time. But it's very similar. All right, for the start of this install, we're going to remove this pocket cover. And there is a 7mm bolt underneath. Next, we're going to drop this shroud under the steering column. And there's going to be two 7mm bolts up here in the corners on each side. And then we're going to pull the dash off. Sometimes these clips may be a little tight. Also, let's pull this steering column down here so it's not going to be in our way. Gonna pop this pocket out. There's a 7mm bolt right here. Pull the dash right off here. This radius secured with 4 more 7mm bolts. The radio pull right out. Disconnect the harness. For this particular install, we're doing a double-din radio. With a lot of these Jeeps, this doubled-in opening in the back will need to be taken out. And this one, we just need to remove these two 7mm bolts. Just pull this metal bracket out. So this particular harness comes with two different harnesses. You'll notice one's rounded and one's squared. You'll need to check with your vehicle inside after you unplug your factory harness to make sure which one you have. One will be used and one will not. This one has the rounded harness. This also comes with everything we need for steering wheel controls. So it'll be pre-programmed in this box. Just need to refer to your instruction manuals, how to set the dip switches. And for this particular, we're putting in an Alpine unit. So we're going to set this dial to switch number 1. So when I'm doing a radio install, I like to take the shortest wires, get everything level, and cut them to that level. So then all my wires, all my runs are going to be exactly the same. So we're going to strip back our wires here, all the necessary wires. And we'll do the same here on our harness. On this particular vehicle, if it does have a factory amplifier, there are some extra steps you need to take. You will have to hook up wires, your speaker wires, a little differently, because if it has a factory amplifier, it only takes 2 channels of input for your factory amplifier. So you will lose your fade. Your balance will still work, but if you go all the way to the front or the rear, however you have it hooked up, that's the output that you will get. So now I'm going to connect all my corresponding wires together. I'm going to solder my wires together here. Make sure you get your solder gun heated up. Again, heat until the wire will pull the solder in. I'm going to tape these wires up. All wires not used, make sure they are taped off as well. Just because they're not being used doesn't mean they don't have power on them. We'll finish our install with some zip ties. Again, just to tidy everything up, make sure no wires get caught up anywhere, pulled apart or anything like that. All right, this harness that comes with our box is for steering wheel controls. This blue-yellow wire will not be used in this installation. You can refer to the instructions. That's only for Kenwood and JVC radios. So we're still going to tape that off. Get plugged in here. Go ahead and plug the rest of these into our box. For this installation, we also will not be using this cage that is mounted in. So we're going to slide it out of there, or this trim ring. This radio kit will fit on the side of the radio like so, fit into the dash to fill the gaps. So this kit, you want to make sure it's down to the side and it's about level with top and bottom. So when it goes into the dash, it'll pull it in and it'll be level, it'll sit flush. All right. Now we need to go into the vehicle and run our Bluetooth mic. Usually when we install Bluetooth mics, we'll put them here about the rear view mirror. For this Jeep, there are clips that hold this panel on. We're going to pull that down just a little bit. Pop that clip out. One thing I like to do with my Bluetooth mics is I'll take the cable, wrap it around the opposite side of the direction I'll be running it. So if you get any tension on that, it won't pull the wire out from underneath the panel. So we're going to slide this up in this panel, and we'll tuck this up underneath this panel. And we'll pop that clip back in place. That'll help hold our wire in place. On this side, there's a clip held in by a screw. Just going to run this cable down the rest of this side here. Since I pulled that screw out, we can actually get behind that screw. That'll help it hold it up there. So I'm going to use this nifty tool that has these fingers on the end that open and is flexible. The rest of this I should be able to run by hand. I'll pull this down in between here. I'll tuck the rest of this so it won't obstruct anything. We'll also take the rest of our excess and bundle it up. Now we'll plug up our antenna adapter. You'll notice we have two. This one is generally for satellite radio, so if you do want to maintain factory satellite radio, we do sell a plug that will plug up to that and will plug up to your satellite tuner directly. This one is the one we're going to plug this into, and it'll slide right on and lock in. Now it's time to put our radio in. So we'll make sure we make all of our connections. Our box will go behind the radio here. This will plug up to what says mic on the back of the radio. This one will plug up to, it says REM, which is for remote. This will plug up to our antenna adapter and into our radio. We'll slide this into the dash. We'll reinstall our 7mm bolts. Before you reinstall the dash, you want to check the radio to make sure everything functions, so you don't put it all back together for no reason. After you verify that everything's worked, we can put the dash back together. So that's how you do the install on front components in a Jeep and radio with Bluetooth. If you have any questions, you can stop in at Crutchfield or give us a call.